the vote is useless to us unless we're organized. We cannot speak of any type of power unless we organize, political, economic, social, otherwise. Therefore, for us, the central task is one of organization. We say to all our people today, if they are not in an organization working for the benefit of the mass of the people, then they're against the people. It's only through organization that we will be liberated. Everybody must be in an organization using their energies to help push us forward.
Yes, my shit right here. So that's my shit right here. Welcome back to another episode of Road to William. Today's episode, we're focusing on Kwame Ture. I started noticing pop up on my feed a lot. Start to hear him speak a little. And I was like, let me learn more about this man, right? You know how I do. I'm going to learn with y'all. We're going to figure this out. We're going to figure out who he is. We're going to listen to some words, some wisdoms that he speaks. And y'all let me know in the comments. Like Black Past. Okay, Black Past, also known as Stokely Carmichael, was born 1941, passed away in 1998. A civil rights leader, anti-war activist, and Pan-African revolutionary, Stokely Carmichael is best known for popularizing the slogan Black Power, which in the mid-1960s galvanized a movement toward more militant and separatist assertions of Black identity, nationalism, empowerment, and away from the liberal, interracial Martin Luther King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Carmichael was born on June 29, 1941, in Port of Spain, Trinidad. His family moved to New York City, New York, when he was 11. He showed promise as a young student and was accepted in the mostly white Bronx High School of Science in 1956. He attended Howard University and joined the newly formed Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, in 1960. He participated in SNCC sit-ins and freedom rides, turned its attention to voter registration. Carmichael led the campaign that established Democratic's betrayal of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. In May 1965, Carmichael was elected to replace John Lewis as SNCC chairman, formalizing the shift in SNCC's ideology. During a 1966 march in Mississippi, Carmichael first proclaimed
socialism. So I adhere also to socialism. I know the socialist economic system is the only system that will solve the unjustness that's to be found in a capitalist system.
Do you think that Black Americans can continue? Do you believe that Black Americans can continue under the current governmental system that we have here in the United States today? Or do you think that some sort of upheaval will have to take place and changes be made?
Well, outside of the government structure, systematically speaking, there must be an upheaval. The capitalist system is in grave crisis. And every time the capitalist system finds itself in crisis, its solution is war. It comes out of it by war. Today, that's going to be a little bit difficult. The peoples around the world, their consciousness has risen. Therefore, they're fighting back. And in America, those who will be called to go and fight, their consciousness has also risen, of course, of Vietnam notwithstanding, so that it will become a little bit more difficult and the problems are going to rise. And the only way to solve the problems is by taking away from the rich that which they have no right to have and equally distributing it among all the people in the society.
Martin Luther King was disturbed somewhat by your movement, and he felt that possibly he was afraid that it would cause what was referred to back then as a white backlash. In view of and now we never really did see a white backlash, I don't think, in my own opinion, during the 60s and 70s. But now, suddenly in this country, we do have a conservative movement, and people, Democrats are changing to Republicans and this sort of thing. Do you think that there's a possibility that there might be a delayed reaction to some of the things that blacks did during the 60s?
I think that there was quite a reaction. It continues. Of course, my disagreement with Dr. King on this point, though minute, was that there's no such thing as a backlash. What there is that we're under racism, and we come to struggle against it. Certainly, as you struggle against any opponent, the opponent stiffens his resistance. And if the opponent happens to be someone oppressing you, they stiffen their oppression. If we have a plantation and there are slaves and the slaves never try a slave revolt, there's no need to tighten up security. But if the slaves try a slave revolt, you can be sure that security is going to be tightened. So consequently, when you struggle against oppression, it is to be expected that those who are oppressing you are going to tighten up the screws of oppression. Dr. King's, his real point was that what was happening was that with the Black Power slogan, it seemed to have isolated whites, and he felt that this isolation of whites, which could be a buffer zone, would just leave us out there isolated by ourselves.
What you spoke to Black students about the history of Blacks and the future of Blacks in America. What kinds of things did you say to them? What kind of advice did you give them?
Well, the first is that we need to be more conscious of our responsibility as human beings and certainly as Africans. And in order to do this, it calls for us properly understanding our history. Our history in this country, our history in the world has not been written by us in the first instance. Even the best meaning, those outside of our race cannot properly comprehend the historical forces which we're up against. Therefore, one is for us to properly understand our history. Once we understand our history, it will give us a guide and map out the path that we must take. Certainly, we have to be organized. We are an unorganized people everywhere across the country, totally disorganized. Consequently, we must become organized, and we must have an organization which we run, which we direct, which we control, which we finance, and to which we give ideological direction, which is crucial. For us, of course, as Pan-Africanists, no African anywhere in the world will ever be free until all of Africa is free. Therefore, our primary occupation is the liberation of Africa and its unification under socialism. This, therefore, is the future direction of the struggle.
If this is achieved, if Africa becomes united and comes under a total Black rule situation, what then happens to the more than 13 million Blacks in America? How do they relate to your Pan-African theory?
The conditions will materially change. In the first place, now Africans the world over will have to be respected. If your home is not in order, certainly you cannot expect respect living in somebody else's house. So the relations will change, and the relationship with Africans themselves will change. We say one of the biggest problems that an oppressed people face is this problem of consciousness. And consciousness is a result of awareness and ability to understand things. Africans all over America think that Africans have never done anything and cannot do anything. Consequently, once Africa is unified and socialist, being one of the richest continents on the face of the earth, should be one of the most powerful. Consequently, their relationship vis-a-vis Africa will change, and vis-a-vis other citizens of the world, other nations and races of the world.
Do to help to organize? In other words, how do you advocate they organize? Should they organize along political lines, form some sort of religion? How do you think it should be done?
Of course, as a revolutionary, we must say along political lines. This is even Greek philosophy. Aristotle himself was to say, and I quote, man by nature is political, and all animals are political. Of course, everything is political. Whether we know it or not, where you go to school, what is taught in school, even how one goes to the bathroom is a political question. Consequently, for us, there must be political organization.
I've heard people predict that as conditions liberalize throughout the world, and of course, we've gone back to being more conservative, so maybe these predictions aren't very correct now, but that eventually in the world we will have a single race, that the races will eventually work out problems and interracial marriages will take place and there will be one race in the world. Do you think that'll ever come true?
It's quite possible. Of course, it's a long way off. But anyway, I don't see any opposition to it. Before it occurs, however, each race will have to properly make its contribution to humanity. Consequently, the Africans will have to make their proper contribution, and it has to be then, of course, and really on an equal footing, not as it is today, where the Africans have nothing to say about it, but it's for your good, and therefore we've decided it for you.
Okay. How do you feel about organizations, religious organizations? I was watching television the other night that move into Africa and then ask for money to donate for food for the Africans that are along the edge of the Sahara Desert, for instance. How do you feel about those movements? Are they good? Are they bad? Do you like them to do that? Would you rather they didn't do that? How do you feel about that?
Well, of course, any organization doing good must be supported, even if one doesn't see the good as a priority for oneself. One cannot not good. And certainly religious organizations really need to be in the forefront. Religions came into being to fight injustice and to bind men and women to just behavior and to proper behavior. And therefore, religious organizations must always be in the forefront fighting against injustices. This is why I have so much appreciation for King as a Christian, because as a Christian, he really understood Christianity and was on the front lines fighting against injustice. Unfortunately,
explain what the All African People's Revolutionary Party is?
The All African People's Revolutionary Party is a mass socialist revolutionary political party. Its objective is Pan-Africanism, which is defined as the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. It says that until Africa is free, no African anywhere in the world will be free. Our central task, as we see it, is the organization of the masses of our people. We see that our people everywhere are disorganized. And rather than people come to tell us what is the problem and what is the solution, they tell us everything other than organizing the people. The African People's Revolutionary Party has taken on its shoulders the responsibility and the task of organizing the millions and billions of Africans scattered all over the world. This task we undertake because we understand it's a necessity. Our people must be organized.
In the United States, what do you feel are some of the most important agenda items for Africa?
Organization is the only one. All other agenda items mean nothing unless we're organized. The vote is useless to us unless we're organized. We cannot speak of any type of power unless we organize, political, economic, social, otherwise. Therefore, for us, the central task is one of organization. We say to all our people today, if they are not in an organization working for the benefit of the mass of the people, then they're against the people. It's only through organization that we will be liberated. Everybody must be in an organization using their energies to help push us forward. There are many organizations out there, from the NAACP to the Republic of New Africa. And everybody should know which organization they think is the one that says the way to get to liberation. If they look and they find in all the organization that this doesn't exist, then it's their responsibility to create the organization that's going to lead us to freedom. But everybody must be doing something in an organized
On a more specific way than, say, identifying institutional racism, you identify what some of the more particular roadblocks to African peoples in the United States and elsewhere gaining the level of awareness that would enable them to rapidly organize.
Well, here the major problem is capitalism. Of course, we see its splinter effects everywhere: police brutality, bad housing, bad schools, bad food, profits rising, etc., etc. So here we can see that the problem is the capitalist system. What we don't want to do is to make the mistake in the past of taking on an aspect of it, not going for the whole central body of the capitalist system. Thus, our party, for example, during the 70s have not been involved in what is seen as mobilized activity, police brutality, free political prisoners. We've not been involved in any of these because we think this is just dispelling the energy from organizing. And for us, the central task is organizing. Once we're organized, we'll take over the police station. But if we continue just doing mobilized activity, we will, for example, since the Scottsboro's boys, we've been doing free political prisoners, and we've come no closer to taking over the police stations. Therefore, here, we say we must not repeat these mistakes and errors. We must go now to organization. Once we're organized, we can take on any aspect of the capitalist system.
Many political quote-unquote leaders of today suggest that America is about to relive the 1960s. what is your response, particularly with respect to African peoples, to that suggestion?
No, this suggestion is made by people who don't know what they're saying and made by the enemy in trying to trick us. Some people actually think that we should go back to the 60s. The reason why we were able to do what we did in the 60s was because it was the first time we did it and the enemy was not prepared for it. At the same time, there was a war in Vietnam and you had African youth in Vietnam with guns in hand. Therefore, overt and brutal repression in the cities would have brought overt rebellion in Vietnam, a divided army they could not have. To think of repeating the 60s without making proper analysis of the 60s is to speak nonsense. Nobody goes backward in history. We cannot go back to the 60s. History doesn't repeat itself. We must go forward. Therefore, we must make a qualified difference. The difference we must make is a difference of organization. We must be organized before we face the system. In the 60s, we were not organized. We were mobilized and had spontaneous rebellions. In the 80s, we cannot have spontaneous rebellions. We must have organized movements.
State, if you would, what you feel the whole African People's Party feels the responsibility of Africans in school.
Europe everywhere speaks of European continental unity. Even though Europe has fought more fratricidal wars than any other continent or all the continents put together, Europe still speaks of European continental unity. Of course, Africa will unify before Europe, but that's not the point of discussion here this evening. The fact that Europe, with all the fratricidal wars she fought, can speak of continental unity shows this evolutionary process. Africa, like any other society anywhere in the world, was involved in this same evolutionary process, going from family to tribe to clan to nation to continent. This evolutionary process was interrupted by European imperialism. It came in two forms, slavery and colonialism. First, they took over 300 million, the strongest out of Africa, and then they divided Africa at the Berlin Conference. So you can see that Africa herself was moving on this evolutionary process. This evolutionary process, which would lead to continental unity, and Africa will still be the first continent unified, was interrupted by European capitalism. Since it was interrupted by European capitalism and evolutionary process, the only way that Africa can unite today is through a revolutionary process aiming at a socialist economy. If capitalism destroyed us, it doesn't make sense to use capitalism to continue with it. We must use the antithesis of capitalism, which of course is socialism. And certainly if an evolutionary process has been interrupted, the only way we can capture the time lost is through a revolutionary process. We state these facts only to let you know that those of us who are revolutionary, Pan-Africanists, is not because we love revolution. It is historically determined, and we have no alternative but to follow history and to use history for the benefit of our people. So this then is the general outlines of Pan-Africanism. So you must not think that Africanism just began. Had Africa been left untrampled by European imperialism, we'd have a long time achieved continental unity. Secondly, Pan-Africanism must be seen as a movement, a mass movement. And this mass movement must be properly understood. Africa, of course, because of racism, is belittled everywhere. And many people do not see Africa's constant, underline the word constant contributions to world civilization. Since the 1940s, Africa has given, even before the 1940s, actually, we can go back to the Honorable Marcus Garvey, Africa has given to world political movements a mass character. Africans revolt in masses, never as a vanguard party. If you look at the independence struggle in Africa, it was nothing less than mass. If you look at the struggle in the Caribbean for independence, it was nothing less than mass. And even the United States of America, the only movement they call a mass movement is our movement. Therefore, this mass character must be properly understood. Pan-Africanism has this mass character. Africans have this mass character in responding. And our responsibility is to bring this mass character together, make it precise so that it can direct its blows at the enemy, hitting him until we knock him down. Therefore, the task of Pan-Africanism is to gather the masses of our people together in the same organization, irrespective of where they find themselves, be it in Europe, be it in the United States, be it in the Caribbean, or be it in Africa. This is the first aspect, then we must understand. Pan-Africanism found its organizational expressions in 1900. Here, a Pan-African conference, here the word conference, was organized by Africans from all over the world. They came together deciding that something must be done for Africa. One of the leading organizers of this conference was a man by the name of Henry Sylvester Williams, born in Trinidad, a man whom you should do some history on. Very, very great man.
Give examples, one more. All women are oppressed everywhere. It's a fact, African women are African men are oppressed our women. In order to properly understand the oppression of each woman, you must understand their particular history. Africa produced the very first queens in the world. And these queens were not slave queens. They had power. Dr. Henry Clark has written the title has escaped me, in which he talks about the contribution of queens. It's a very small pamphlet. I'm sorry, the title has escaped me. I don't read so much. But in the book, the pamphlet, Dr. Clark shows and demonstrates that every time a queen occupied the throne in Africa, Africa advanced technologically, socially, politically, economically. And if a queen was on the throne and the enemy invaded, there was no compromise. These are historical facts. You see, African women are exploited today, oppressed today. Yes, they are. African men exploit their women everywhere, but the one place they can never exploit the women is on the front lines fighting for the people. If you will look at the history of Africa, you will see women on the front lines, all the way from the first queens, all the way down through Nzinga, all the way to Atata Shaku on the front lines fighting for the people. No other race has produced women warriors as we have for the entire world. I heard much nonsense about the 60s from those who've done nothing but write books. Chinese say participation, no right to vote. Thank you. No participation, no right to speak. If you haven't participated in something, really you can't speak about it, because what you observe and what you see and what is not the same thing. Heard them say that women play no role in the struggle. How could they say that about us? Say that women are oppressed. Yes, our women are oppressed. But they say that our women play no role in the struggle. So hopefully you know what they're talking about. As a matter of fact, they talk about the 60s. Martin Luther King got up because the women sat down. Rosa Parks. It was Rosa Parks that put us in our feet. Where did they come from? She was Rosa Parks. And Rosa Parks wasn't just some little seamstress. She was an organizer, secretary for the Midway City. She was an organizer. The only way this can be combated is through mass political organization. I think we're about at the conclusion. Fundamentals for unity presupposes organization. Now, we did say one thing, and this is a point we must hammer home. We said that when you think, you must think differently from the enemy. The confusion is here. Many Africans in America actually think, and even some who call themselves revolutionary and Marxist say that we Africans in America have the same culture like other people in America. And they say it. This is a great error. This causes a great deal of confusion. Like the Ture says, every people have their culture. As a matter of fact, our culture has been infected with the American capitalist culture and continues to be and will be until we destroy it. If you're not thinking clearly about the culture, bring big errors. I'll give you an example. People have a problem with gay rights and gay and lesbian rights. Man said, how come I hear you speak? I never hear you speak about gay and lesbian rights. That's right. She said, but I go all the others, they speak about it. I said, we are not from the same political platform. I fight for my people's culture. I know they have one. My job is every day to more properly define it and to fight for it. You think we don't have one, so you fight from a capitalist culture. You'll never get anywhere. Africa has a culture of its own. And her people are the carriers of that culture. And anyone who knows anything about culture, when it's attacked, the people hide it from themselves. Malcolm X said it. He said, they don't call themselves Africans, but you scratch them a little bit, you'll see how African they are. They've hidden Africa from themselves. That is to say, the people seeing the enemy overwhelm them will hide the very culture from the people themselves. The conscious element will come to see how they've hid it, to pick it up. Let me give examples on homosexuality. If you will look at the history of Europe, and you know the first law is always to know the enemy, you will see Europe has a bloody history of the relationship of homosexuality, from Greece all the way down to today, where they're bashing the heads of homosexuality. Africa has some of this. Even Africans in America do not bash the heads of homosexuality. The question of homosexuality is a question of intolerance. Europe's culture is most intolerant. It's really a culture that has no diversity. It thinks equality.
In the 1960s, if you would go to white colleges, all the white boys on there were wearing Ku Klux and Santa strong for all of life. The other day I saw one wearing long hair. He said, "Why did you get from anywhere?" I said, "Make it possible for you to wear long hair." Look up the conformity. It's most intolerant. It's most intolerant. African culture is very tolerant. As a matter of fact, that's why we have trouble with today. I remember as a young tough in Harlem, I used to go to the Audubon Ballroom when Malcolm was assassinated. I used to go to Rockland Palace, and if my memory serves me correctly, it used to happen in April. It still happens. They were homosexuals in the African community, and they put up signs, and I see them now. They have a big transvestite ball. And they would come at Rockland Palace, we were tough. I mean, 15, 16-year-olds. Wouldn't anybody think about hitting anything. The best we could say is, "You really think no one is a woman?" Yes. No, whatsoever. The hardest organization in our community against homosexuality is the Nation of Islam. You hear the Honorable, you hear Minister Farrakhan now say, "You better tell them they got to straighten up their wrists." Yes. But everyone knows James Baldwin. And James Baldwin, no African ever hid their homosexuality. James Baldwin was a homosexual. And yet you would hear Malcolm X and Farrakhan praising James Baldwin for his contribution to the struggle.
Y'all still with me? One more video, and we're gonna close it out. We're gonna watch a little bit of this debate, but I do want to watch this in full with y'all. But Angela Davis and Kwame are in this, and I just did a video on Angela Davis. If you haven't watched that, go check that out. But since they both were in the last two videos we were in, we just gonna end it off with this. Make sure y'all hit that like button, subscribe, share the video. Let me know if you're new here. Say what's up. Leave your thoughts in the comments. And yeah, let's keep building together as a community, lifting each other up.
Stokely and then Nelson.
Well, I think that the real question is that people are not clear on capitalism, because capitalism is a very vicious system. But what it does is it embroideries its viciousness with all sorts of elusive terms. For example, many of us would support capitalism because we actually believe that in a capitalist system, there's a chance for us to get the same amount of money that Rockefeller gets, because we're told that under capitalism, there is equality of opportunity. So that we feel that if this year we didn't make as much as a Rockefeller made, then we got to work a little bit harder. And next year we're going to make it. But if we carefully examine a capitalist system, we will see that it's based on exploitation, because the viciousness of capitalism, and the reason why once Black people examined we can never be for it, is that under a capitalist system, the fruits of those who labor are enjoyed by somebody else. That is, those who do the laboring, the fruits of their labor, they don't enjoy it. As a matter of fact, we could say under capitalism that the fruits of the labor of the toiling masses are enjoyed by those who do not labor. And again, as Black people, we have clear examples of it. If we were to get the fruits of our labor from slavery, just from slavery, all we got to do is go to Nixon and say, "Hey, look, you give us the fruits of our labor from slavery," and we forget the score. We would be the richest people in the country, again, because under capitalism, the individual exploits the labor of the people. Now, people get confused because this is a capitalist system and it's a developed system. It's a technological system. So they combine capitalism with technology and development, and they think that there is no other possible way to develop this rapid terms of development without going through the capitalist route. But certainly we have examples that show the opposite of that. China is a clear example of that. Cuba is, North Korea, North Vietnam. These countries certainly in Africa, where countries have chosen the socialist path, such as Tanzania, Guinea, Congo, Brazzaville, Algeria, we see that there is another way to develop and get the same type of things that we have under the capitalist system, but in a system that does not exploit each other, where all of us work and the fruits of our labor are divided evenly. Let me show you how backward capitalism is. It's a backward system. We could make two statements about capitalism to show how backward it is. About America. America is a capitalist country. It's thoroughly capitalist. It's an imperialist country. But we could say that, number one, America is the most technologically advanced country in the world. And that's an undeniable fact. It's a truism. It's a truism. America is the most scientifically developed country in the world. And right under that, we could say a second fact, which will show you how backward America is. We could say that America, in 1945, made for her people better cars than she does in 1973. And if you analyze this, you'll see how vicious the system is, because here's America with its great technological skills, its great scientific ability, and rather than making a safe car for people that will last 20 years, which they can do with the scientific knowledge that's at their fingertip, they rather take this knowledge and build a car which will break down every 2 years, so you're forced to buy another car. Thus, you see, under capitalism, what they do is they take their scientific skills, and rather than using it for the benefit of the people, they use it to further exploit the people. And certainly this type of system is too backward.
I think Nelson's I concur with the position that Brother Carmichael is taking with regards to the system of capitalism. But really, I think there are two fundamental questions that we need to get into. The first one was suggested when we started, like what is possible within the context of this system and the coming together of people and that type of thing. Which I think as we begin to hear the things that people are saying about capitalism, it tends to start to answer that question. I mean, as we see the
that we never really got to the substance of what we're feeling. That what we got was a lot of rhetoric, a lot of waving of the flag, and then you're supposed to go away feeling that Watergate is just going to disappear. And I think that it was an unfair trick to play on the American public.
Well, you know,
it's one thing, I'm sorry, it's one thing, that is the only president in the history of my time, and I'm 56, that can talk an hour and never say nothing.
But we also have to ask ourselves what the real meaning of that Watergate affair is. I think it's important, especially for those of us who are here this afternoon, to recognize that if the Republican Party will go that far to sabotage the Democratic Party, to sabotage that kind of opposition, what have we already been experiencing insofar as repression is concerned? And what will we as Black people have to face in the future? Because there are many of us who feel that not only the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party as well is committed to upholding a system of exploitation and racism. If you look at the McGovern campaign, McGovern didn't even raise the question of racism, and he was supposed to be the far left wing of the Democratic Party. So I think it's important to see this Watergate scandal as being an indication of the real threat of fascism.
I think
what it is an indication of the lawlessness of law officials and the abuses of state power at the highest level. You have to take it beyond the particular example, as Davis said, of Watergate, to understand what's going on at all levels in our society as far as abuses of power by the government is concerned, particularly in political areas. If they're doing this against the established opposition, what are they doing against Black people? What are they doing against political activists? What is happening with statutes that are being passed and the people who are being appointed to the courts, the decisions the courts are rendering? What's happening at the street level in terms of the administration of justice? Then you get the full impact of just how lawless these people are who are supposedly in charge of administering the law. When you look at the statutes the Congress is passing, preventive detention, you see the no-knock, you see the stop and frisk, you see the Interstate Riot Act. You look at the Supreme Court of the United States consistently cutting back upon what we regard as traditional rights in this country, doing away with the non-unanimous jury. When you look at the street level, the level of violence, officially sanctioned violence.
But the disorder and race riots.
I
would hope not.
I think that we have a responsibility, because no doubt the atmosphere is that we have a responsibility to construct that consciousness that will now rise, and to guide it in whatever channels we see, irrespective of whether we say we're violent or non-violent. I think we do have a responsibility to try and channel that.
Right, because while we can agree on an increase in racism.
All right, y'all. Y'all know how we do it up in here. Let me know in the comments how y'all felt about the video. Have you read the book? Have you read his book? If so, let me know your thoughts on that. But I will be reading this book soon. Give y'all an update on that. Thanks. Putting on Love Jones, so you can hear the love through these words, like I'm doing to the beat. I just want you to feel how I feel. Yeah. Can we feel the same heartbeat? Heartbeat.